How's it going, y'all? It's your boy Raymond back up in here with another review video, and today we've got another special one. Today we're going to be talking about the new Kiyoshi Kurosawa film, Cloud. If you're not familiar with Kurosawa, he is a Japanese-born filmmaker, and he is best known for his work in the Japanese horror genre, but has also done a lot of side projects and has done a lot of Yakuza films as well, a lot of action stuff in Japan. As for his horror stuff that is really popular in the US, I have seen his films such as Pulse and Cure, and I'm a huge fan of both of them. Cure specifically, I really just loved the atmosphere and the sort of detective noir mix with the horror adjacent elements that he brings to that film. His filmography is so vast, and I would really love to spend time sort of diving into his more obscure work and also his Yakuza films after seeing Cloud as well. But after hearing that he was going to be coming out with, I think, like 3 features over the course of this year, I was really excited to see what a modern day Kurosawa film was really going to look like. And while I had some expectations going into it because of his previous work, I hadn't really done a whole lot of research on this new film, so in terms of the subject matter, I wasn't all too sure what exactly it was going to be about. So I was just going into it like pretty fresh and just not really knowing what I was getting into. And honestly, going into it like that, it was definitely shocking when talking about the subject, this world that Kurosawa decides to tackle in this film. It's something that I definitely did not expect him to make a movie about, but seeing him sort of portray it in this sort of way, I think is definitely kind of interesting and a little funny. The film essentially takes place in modern day Japan, where we see this factory worker who is essentially working in like a factory, pretty menial, like sort of 9 to 5 kind of job. His boss wants to give him a raise, but he hates his job, so he doesn't want to take it. He's looking for some sort of side hustle to sort of get him some extra money on the side and possibly even quit his day-to-day job. So he essentially begins bulk buying these quantities of random stuff that he thinks that he can resell online. There's even like an image of him going on Amazon and buying like these limited edition like action figures or something, and then just bulk buying like a shit ton of stuff so that he can resell it for, markup prices, of course, like on the Japanese trading network or something. And it's funny because he very quickly has success, and a lot of like the first half of the film is really just setting up this idea and this rabbit hole that he goes down of just reselling a bunch of this quantity, and the entire film sort of sets up as this reseller nightmare kind of film, which is definitely something that I wasn't expecting somebody like Kurosawa to tackle, but to see it done in sort of like this horror-ish way is definitely interesting. It's an interesting angle to take on it for sure. And so he eventually starts buying so much that he needs a bigger house. So he essentially invests into like this bigger house, and he eventually gets like this girlfriend, and they move in together so that he can have more room for all of his stuff that he's going to sell, and eventually even gets like an assistant to help him out that he kind of, throws off to the side and kind of treats him like shit. And he's continuing to grow and grow this like empire basically of just reselling stuff, and to the point where it almost becomes like an obsession, and he almost gets so deep into it that it's like this weird thrill for him. Only like about 20 to 30 minutes in, this is already starting to feel like very Kurosawa. Like all of a sudden these weird occurrences start happening where things are starting to happen as he's growing and as he's getting more success. More and more people are starting to threaten him. People online who see his posts and see the stuff that he's reselling and all this money that he's making, they're starting to threaten him, and he starts to feel this crazy anxiety and paranoia throughout his day-to-day. And there's even a point where he gets like attacked in the middle of the night, where somebody throws a piece of like a engine part or something like through his bedroom window and stuff like that, freaking out like him and his wife. There's like a couple scenes here or there where you think that something's going to happen. It's just like these weird pranks that keep occurring to him throughout like the first half of the film. And it all sort of comes to this head in towards like the halfway point where he starts to see people complaining online about like him and his site. And then he starts reading like death threats about him and just starts like reading all of this like crazy shit about him and how people were going to come to his house and like kill him. And it's around this halfway point in the film where the tone of this film really takes like a 180-degree turn. It essentially goes from like a pretty standard Kurosawa sort of horror thriller into almost like this revenge action film. About halfway, we cut away from the main character's plot and we see that we cut to like this like group of people that I guess got hired by some of the people that he screwed over in the selling stuff, or like in the upsell market. And they essentially get hired to go take out our main protagonist here. And they like invade his house and then like chase him out of the house with guns and like, you know, hacks and just weapons and stuff. Like it's really crazy. And it just ends up being like this sort of, you know, action, almost like Sergio Leone style like showdown thing for like the last like third of the film. It essentially turns into like home invasion thriller, and then they, you know, chase him out of the house, and then they make their way over to like this abandoned factory, of course, like typical Kurosawa film. You know, in the abandoned warehouse, they essentially have like this eerie like chase sequence slash like showdown type thing. And then we find out that the assistant that he like got rid of is part of like this I don't know, like this interconnected society or something, and the assistant has been sent out to like protect him at like all costs, and shows up to this like abandoned factory to protect him, and has like guns and ammo and stuff, and is like this trained like soldier spy or something. I don't even know. It's really crazy by the last third. And of course, like when the gang show up at his house, it's like almost comically bad how bad they are at like their job. They show up, they can't even kill him, they just threaten him. I don't know like what their purpose is, if they were hired to kill him or like to tie him up and threaten him, or like get some sort of torture revenge out of it. I don't know. They eventually get him at like the factory, and he needs to be saved by the assistant, but it takes like so long, and they're so bad at their job that they like all end up dying anyways. It essentially like almost turns into like John Wick for like, you know, like the last third of it, just going through this abandoned factory, trying to assassinate each other, you know, them getting trapped in like a corner, and then, you know, killing like everybody who tried to kill him. Like it's crazy. But then the biggest twist at the end is that the girlfriend is like the one who might betray him, but then the assistant ends up killing her anyways. It's just insane. Like it's hilarious how he is like, we'll stop at nothing to protect our main protagonist here. And then by the end, like after everybody has essentially been just decimated by the assistant character, he essentially tells him that he has to keep like reselling stuff because of, you know, the higher ups that told him to or something. It's so insane. Like there's like this syndicate, I guess, of like resellers or something in Japan that it's alluding to, that need him to keep like reselling stuff online. And then at that point, it's just like over. That's like the whole film. And I guess the moral of the story is just don't like resell stuff and be an asshole, I guess, or, you know, don't be consumed by money and power, I'm assuming is what he's trying to say out of this film. It's so odd, and it feels so jarring, especially after like the two halves of the film almost feel like they were directed by different people, or maybe he just had a completely different idea going into what he wanted to do for the second half. So maybe they like shot it at completely different times, and so there were, you know, many changes of like the script over the period of time. But you know, in the Q&A, it seemed like this was the idea that he wanted to go with, and it seemed like this was really something that he wanted to talk about. But it's such an interesting subject for somebody like Kurosawa to really tackle, especially in like a horror thriller mixed with like an action film kind of structure. It's so odd, and yet I think, you know, the first half really works for me because I really love the way that Kurosawa does horror stuff. But then the second half just feels really bland and kind of off. And, you know, I kind of forgot about like the first half of the film after like the second half, after we came through like all of like the action stuff. The stakes are just like kind of, you know, whatever. Everything feels very plotted out. And it doesn't help that I like the day after I watched Cloud, I saw a screening of Cure with the Q&A with Kurosawa. And after watching Cure and then thinking back on Cloud, I was going like, you know, I don't know what happened. Like, I think Cure is just phenomenal. And to hear that, you know, Cure was almost like a side project from like the Yakuza films that he was doing at the time, that was really something that was super interesting with how, you know, good the quality of Cure is. Just to sort of see this as something that was like a passion project that he was doing, it falls like just a little flat for me, and I'm not, you know, super interested in the subject matter per se. And then the tone shift in the last half of the film, it just really doesn't do it for me. I just kind of wish if it had kept the same tone and the same vibe from what was set up in the first, you know, hour or so all the way through the end in some sort of creative way. I think it would have been really interesting. And again, with those Yakuza films, the action isn't necessarily something that is new for Kurosawa, but to see it done in this way after what was set up in the first half of the film, it just doesn't feel as satisfying to me. I think the performances are really good. I think I think the direction is very interesting. I will say that overall, like, the look of the film just seems a little bland in comparison to his previous stuff. It doesn't have that edge, that, you know, sort of texture that a lot of his earlier films like Pulse and like Cure have. I don't know. It's just kind of overall just a whatever experience for me, unfortunately. I think overall I still generally like the film. I just think that, you know, after that second half, it just really kind of falls flat for me. And I just don't think that it really has any sort of staying power for me. I would much rather go check out his other stuff than really come back to something like this. But I'm still curious to see the two other films that he's coming out with later this year as well. I don't know. Maybe this is just something that's just, you know, didn't vibe with me. It might vibe with you guys. But for me personally, I think the subject matter and with how, you know, the last half of the film was executed, I just don't think it's really for me. And personally, I don't know if I can necessarily recommend the film, but if you're a big Kurosawa fan, obviously check it out because it is a brand new Kurosawa. But I think for this film, I am going to give it a 5 out of 10. I initially gave it a 6, but I think I'm just going to lower it to a 5 because I gave The Apprentice a 6, and I think I have a lot stronger feelings about that one than I do this film. And I think the quality of that film is also like a bit better than this film. So I think a 5 is fairly sufficient, but unfortunately, you know, is not that great for me. I still think it's fine. I think the performances are good. And I think the first half of the film is very interesting. However, it just really falls flat in the end. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Those were pretty much like all my thoughts. Like I said, I mean, I think the film's going to be coming out in like December or January or something, so it's still got a little while before its wide release. I was lucky that I got to see it early at Beyond Fest. You know, if you guys feel differently, I'm sure there's going to be some Kurosawa fans in the comments who are going to be very vocal about how they feel about it, but go ahead and like and subscribe and put your comments down below. If you guys have already seen it, you know, go ahead and put your thoughts down in the comments. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the subject. Be sure to stay tuned for some more stuff that I'm going to be posting. I saw a couple more films, and I might do another music review at some point because there's been a lot of stuff that has come out, and I haven't really been able to keep up on it. But yeah, stay tuned. There's definitely going to be some more stuff coming out. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video.